Morning guys, Will, just in time prepping. How you guys doing today? Nice rainy day here in Nebraska. We're going to start our story time with Will this morning, and what we're going to do is kind of overlap since the story we kind of ended abruptly last time because the page wouldn't turn for us and it froze up on me, so I'm just going to overlap to try to catch up. So without any further ado, let's get to it, okay? I'm talking about Marc and Angela. We're on book 7 of chapter 13 still, and we're going to start with Marc knelt down by her bumper and worked with his small toolkit while they talked. Angela nodded, frowning at the thought of being close enough to him, to any man, long enough to learn something like that. Okay to both. Good. We'll plan routes together and share the chores. I'll keep my distance as best I can and still protect you, Marc said as he removed the brake light bulb and placed in the mag with the ones from his vehicle. In return, I'll need more than an introduction. It can wait until you decide about your man, but then they'll both have to be told so that I can spend time with my son. So you can see I'm overlapping the story here. Don't leave it in the comments that, hey, I've already read this part, because I know I have. I just kind of want to overlap it so that we can go right into book 8. Angela found again the things he wanted were reasonable, but there was great fear in her heart. Agreed. Anything else? Yes, I need to know things about your life. We can leave that for when you're ready, but on the way, I'd like to tell me about Charlie, everything I missed, bedtime stories, any pictures you have. She gave him a small smile that didn't reach her cold eyes, and he wondered what his words she hadn't liked. All of it? Angela gave him another nod and then a thin smile. Is that it? Good. Now I have conditions. First and most important, we will travel every day. I'm in a hurry, and I want that to be clear up front. Second, you're in charge, but when I say to change direction, we do it. We'll use the maps, but I am tracking him too, and I trust me. Marc thought she sounded like a mother bear protecting her cub. To a man who hadn't had anything but guilt and loneliness for a long time, even before the war, it was attractive. Agreed. Next. Next is last. When we get there, do as I ask and abide by my choice. I want no violence if it can be helped. You'll see that I get time with Charlie even if we have to sneak. Her voice was shaky. Yes, you'll protect us from Kenny, even if it comes to blood. The open fear in her expression hurt him. With my life, baby. The answer fell easily despite the years between them, when she only nodded again. Marc caught the fact that she didn't tell him that it wouldn't come to that. What was he walking into? Then I agree. Mindful about keeping his distance, still stinging from it, Marc didn't put out his hand until she did hers. He recognized her reluctance, saw her almost draw back before placing her small fingers against his. Lightning flashed, forking into thick clouds that rolled across the sky as the lovers touched. Electricity sparked, threatening to sweep into their past. Marc let go. He was the man of his word. For Angela, the silence after the crash was deafening, but she didn't apologize for the small theft of some of his healthy energy. She was almost sure he hadn't noticed anyway. Her oddness was something that she'd planned to rely on now, and he would have to get used to it. Kenny hadn't even been able to consider accepting her for what she was without using it for his own gain. Would Marc be different? She stood up, began cleaning their lunch mess. Only time will tell. Come on, Sir Lancelot. I'd like to make another 3 by dark. Marc snapped his stiff salute, and Angela glanced away before he could see the disappointment. Had a tiny part of her lonely heart been hoping that one of the conditions might be another chance with her, if he decided not to stay with Kenny. She shut and locked her car door, swallowing the bitter pain. That was exactly what the old Angela had been waiting for, and it was a struggle not to cry as she shifted into gear. Book 8. They traveled until it began to get dark. The rain had finally cleared, leaving only the damp, reeking wind as they rolled over dead wires attached to the downed poles around hundreds of trees that had their tops sheared off. It was sad and monotonous, and despite her need to hurry, Angela was glad when Mark finally called her on the radio. She was beat. Ready? Yes, you pick, I'll cook. Deal. That long driveway on your right. Carefully easing up a muddy driveway that was full of cracks and weeds, Angela quickly saw the benefits of his choice. Thick trees blocked them from view on one side, as far as the eye could see, and a cornfield did the same on the rest of the property that surrounded the small farmhouse. A few of the big windows were broken, but the home looked otherwise undamaged, and Mark drove toward the small carport, hoping there was room for two. He had honestly expected Angie to be driving something flashy and unusable. Her obvious seriousness about making this trip was something of a relief, as well as a worry. She hadn't spoke of someone who wasn't exaggerating. Mark stopped, watching her slowly ease her vehicle into the dirt row of corn, snapping a surprising few of the knee-high stalks. Obviously, she had done this a few times. Closing his mouth on the correction he had started to give, Mark waited to determine what she had in mind. Angela pulled out a rolled-up camouflage tarp, and when she tossed it over her blazer, pulling gently on the stiff ends, the muddy vehicle disappeared. Mark felt the Marine inside stir in respect as her resourcefulness. Fresh recruits tried hard for 8 weeks to impress him, usually without success, and she had done it in less than a day. There was room for both of us. She had crawled under the tarp, and the radio made him jump. Copy. Angela stood on her roof, holding the tarp up so that he could pull in. Mark concentrated on what he was doing instead of her. He put the car in park and killed the engine, watched her step casually across his hood, and jumped down. She tugged the tarp until he had to flip on his inside light to see by. Wearing gloves and a heavier coat, Angela was driving thick steel pegs into the corners of the large tarp when he emerged, and Mark went to secure the house, dog at his side. His movements were careful, thorough, but his mind stayed with the woman he could hear working. She was an asset to his new world. He had realized that already. She was strong, smart, and a possible target for every man who spotted her. That was what had stopped him from leaving. Mark was sure the fire in the woods had been set. He'd found something on the corner of the tailgate that could be the trim from a bullet. The brothers had tried to fry her in her sleep, and when she'd woken too soon, they had started shooting. The smoke had ruined their aim and saved Angela's life. Amid the cracking tree branches and the roar of the flames, Mark hadn't even known they were under attack. She wouldn't stand a chance without him, and he had loved her too much to let her go in this suicide mission unprotected. Loved? His heart questioned scornfully. Mark pushed it away. They would stay on the side roads and be careful with shooting lessons that would draw attention. One glimpse of her, and we'll be under attack again, he thought. An hour later, they were settled in their bedrolls on the floor, eating and trying not to stare at each other. You don't wear any insignia. What branch of the Marines were you in? Mark was dwelling on her story of finding fresh meat in the basement of a lavish home that she'd passed in Edinburgh. Drawn by the lights on the windows, she had found the generator still running. There had obviously been people here recently, but she said she hadn't run into anyone while exploring the big house. What courage that must have taken. Brady? The one with no name. His words made her frown. Hadn't Kinney said about the same thing a few years ago when she asked about the advancement? She sighed, peering at the bedroll between her and the blanket-covered doorway as the wind blown outside. Kinney was going to be pissed so that she couldn't even predict what he might do. Was Mark equal to that? Like the unit? Mark peered up at her. You watched that BS? Every Tuesday, no matter what. Her bitter tone made his smile fade, and Mark waited for more. But there was only silence. He could feel her wanting to ask if it was good and admired her control that she didn't. Yes, he finally said, answering the unspoken question. You're sure? She asked gravely. He nodded, not quite thinking about the harshest things he'd done, but she could feel the darkness, the dirty stain on his soul, and was comforted. Him too. He's got 4 years in now. Mark's face was shuttered. Most men don't do it that long. It's dangerous work. She heard it, felt there was more, and let herself ask, How long for you? 8. I had my own team. Angela knew he was heartbroken over the personal losses, could hear it in his tone, but she couldn't bring herself to mouth the usual pleasantries that the old world would have required. He was mourning a great life. She barely had one to lose. She'd clung to her sons, and now one was rotting underground and the other one was lost in the wilderness. Belly content for the first time in a while, Mark flipped through the pictures she had set by his plate. He was glad she hadn't pushed him away and he'd stayed here so long. The question required trust, and they didn't have any yet. Why didn't you call me, Angie? I would have come and taken responsibility. She pushed away her half-finished burger and corn. I wanted more back then. I wanted all of you or nothing. She lit a smoke. Besides, they wouldn't have left us alone. You know it. Between their religious crap and your shame, we didn't stand a chance. Didn't I deserve to help make that choice? He asked quietly. Angela took the cigarette from her mouth with shaky hands. She knew he saw. There was probably little that she didn't notice. Yes, we both deserved to be happy, but it was a takeaway. I found out about the baby and I was alone. I made hard choices that were wrong sometimes, but we've always been together, and no one has ever told him that he's going to hell because of our sins against God. Mark winced, fading in time to the confrontation with his mother. She's your family. How could you? His mother shouted. Not by blood, slapped by God. That was a long time ago. Angela's voice had held a tremor. A lot of hurt between then and now, he agreed. We made our choices. What's done is done. She yawned tirelessly and stood up, still surprised to discover that the obvious pain and regret didn't please her. She really did owe him much worse for the only way he'd abandoned her. She headed for the doorway, pulling on her jacket. When he followed, Angie said nothing but felt immediately better that he was taking her request for protection seriously. So where all have you been since that war? She asked. She went to her blazer and he hung back, thinking her waist was still so small that he could span it with both hands. He shoved them into his pockets instead, remembering a time when he'd been free to do that and a lot more. It was in Virginia when the bombs fell, going home for a funeral. Whose? My mother's. Angela started to offer her sympathy, and he held up a hand. Don't bother. I went home to bury the past, not her. She's been dead for me for a long time. He lit a Winston, casual tone not changing. After Roanoke, I traveled northeast for a couple of weeks, but it was all worse. There was already mutations in West Virginia, and after that, I changed directions. I've been to about 20 other bases, offices, and centers. There's nothing. Hearing it only made Angela a bit sadder than she'd already been. That was gone. That world was gone, and eventually they, or she, would stop expecting its return. Angela got another duffel bag from the rear seat and disappeared behind a tree, liking that she had waved the wolf after her. This was why she needed him. He would teach her to be strong and protect her while she learned. And what happens when he runs out of things to teach? The witch asked ominously. Angela wasn't in any state to search that far ahead and didn't answer. They were quickly back inside the tepid warmth of the faded, drafty farmhouse, both of them avoiding looking at the happy faces of the family who had lived there, smiling from the walls around them. How much gas do you have? Mark pushed the heater closer to the window so the draft would carry it farther into the room. Only a quarter of a tank, but I have 2 10-gallon cans in the rear seat. Great, I've got about the same. We should be okay for a few days. Mark spent a minute at the window scanning the landscape around their vehicles. He had chosen this room because it was the closest to one of the wheels that had a window for quick escape. Mark wondered if he should point that out to her. How much did she want to learn while they traveled? Have you seen anyone rebuilding? Any place for people to go? Angela asked. Suddenly wondering if his home had included a wife, the pain was almost staggering. No, and I've been looking. It's always the same. Things are bad and getting worse. She didn't say anything. After 10 days out in the horrible new world, she had seen too much to believe that this was a normal recovery time after a global tragedy. Clearly, the government was gone and its people were on their own. So he's Akram? Angela smiled at the thought of her son, and the beauty of it made Mark stare. Enough of those could blind a man from even seeing other women. He has been for 3 years. Have a child, raise a Marine was one of Kenny's better ideas. They were in the New Mexico at an annual competition when the war came. They never miss it and usually bring home a box of trophies from the outside. He's the perfect dad. Angela settled herself on the couch, rubbing at her face, and Mark forced his mouth to shut. He was going slowly so that he didn't miss any clues and was already seeing things that bothered him. The jumpiness, the hand flinching toward her gun, at every sound, he could be attributed to her being attacked by the brothers. But there was also the way she hesitated to walk, look close, or look at him in the eye. No physical contact was given, but her cold reaction to his hug had been unexpected, uncalled for. What? Where'd you get that wolf? Dog? Mark smiled awkwardly, not sure how his thoughts were picking up. He was part of a pack before we met. Rangers caught him after a kid was taken. They were gonna put him down. Yeah, my buddy had a fam with room, and once there, dog settled in and we made friends. He obeys well for still being mostly wild. It's good that you didn't take him from that. Mark lit a smoke, thinking almost people didn't realize the fact that they heard that story. I only changed him where it had to. He went on base with me, on missions a few times. Saved my ass more than once to have him along. It sounds like you lived the ideal bachelor's life, Angela hated for being too weak to resist and was aware he knew the answer mattered. Mark didn't hesitate. There was never anyone for me after you. You're a tough act to follow. The old Angela did enjoy the hurt in his voice this time, and she slapped out at him with sharp claws not quite fully extended. Hell, Brady. Thought you were gonna have a supermodel by now. I never figured you for a swinging single. Mark smiled uncertainly, shrugging, but his heart screamed ambush at her almost accusing tone. I wasn't that either. Too many strange ones out there. I had one fast date with a girl who had a nose ring and 3-inch black fingernails. Strange. Angela opened her mouth before she could censor the words and was appalled by the jealousy that spewed out. Did she have long black curls, white skin like all the others? Did you see my face when you exploded inside her? Mark sucked in a breath, hurting a face covered in the truth. Angela stood up, sorry and afraid. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I said that. After everything you've been through, I guess you owe me a few. Mark stood too, reeling from the blow that she already knew he wasn't over her. He frowned when he caught her flinch. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. The note of real fear was unmistakable, and he slowed his actions, put his back to her so that she couldn't witness the rage on his face. She was afraid of him, terrified. But I do, she protested. Mark moved towards the door, but his sharp gaze was on her, and he recognized the relief on her face when he kept going. I called, didn't I? She argued tirelessly as his hand went to the knob. Yes, but you're not sure if you can trust me. It's a problem. We'll have to work on it. It's not a problem. I'm fine, Angela insisted, worrying that he was about to leave. Then why do you go for your gun every time I move? He watched her slide trembling hands into her pockets. I'll be back in a few minutes. Mark waved at the wolf, voice hard. Stay, guard her. The animal immediately lay down in the doorway, and Mark shut the door, leaving Angela relieved, confused, and sorry she hadn't controlled her reactions better. Mark traveled the perimeter, furious Angie was scared, and not that childish shitwoman did over mice and spiders. It was real fear of being hurt, and she hated people who had taught her that. He was hoping her life hadn't been as bad as observing her implied, but every minute they spent together said that it had been worse. The fear she was carrying was not from being attacked by the twins. It wasn't new. She was terrified of men, and that only came from being hurt by one. What if she had been abused, his heart demanded. What if it was as she says? What if it comes from her and finds out that she's not alone? Then I'll fight for her. The words were instinctive, and Mark now thought he'd probably end up doing that anyway. It was ingrained. If she chooses not to be with her Marine anymore, his conscience threw into condition, but Mark lashed out in a bitter anger. To hell with her, man. She was mine first. And we're going to stop there. And we'll start book 9 next time. I'll bookmark the page. And we finally got through all of that other section. I overlapped it on purpose so that we could catch up. I know last week was kind of upside down. So that's it for story time for today, you guys. Tomorrow we have the live stream. And I want to tell you guys, tomorrow we're going to have a special guest on. Tomorrow we're going to have my son Dustin is going to help me do spinning the wheels and stuff, and he's going to visit with you guys for the first time so that you guys can kind of get to know him a little bit as we move into the next phase of my channel where I start using him more and more to help me out doing some stuff. So until next time, you guys, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll catch you out there tomorrow. Thanks for watching, you guys.